welcome to Kung Fu Pod. Kung Fu means hard work, and that's exactly what this podcast is about. How you can apply Kung Fu, or hard work, to your everyday life. I am joined by Sifu Matthew Martin from Raleigh, North Carolina. He's a Wah Lum Sifu who's been teaching up there for over 5 years now.
About 5 years now, yeah.
Right, and so some of you may recognize him from our previous Kung Fu Pod where he hiked the Appalachian Trail, which was crazy, but you can go back and look at that one. That's not what we're necessarily here to talk about today. I would love for you to share with our viewers and listeners a little bit about, your Kung Fu journey and really, especially becoming a Sifu, because a lot of people always think, wow, how do you become a Sifu? Can I just sign up for that? Can I buy the black belt program? What was that journey like for you in terms of when you realized, like, this is what I want to do. I want to become a Sifu.
Well, frankly, I didn't know for a very long time that I ever wanted to become a Sifu. I knew that there was something about Wah Lum Kung Fu that resonated with me intensely and deeply. And so I knew probably early within the first couple of years, as I'm sure most new students think this, but I thought it also, and it turned out circumstantially to be true in my case, that I wanted to continue to do this. I wanted to at least be efficient at this. And so I dedicated myself quite a bit to it. It was only a matter of my Sifu's guidance that led me to initially coaching and assisting that I started to realize, oh yeah, there's an additional benefit to this type of work as well. And I hadn't been in that position prior in my life. So it was the first time someone gave me a responsibility like that, and I was not good at it.
I know.
Yeah, I know you know.
For those that don't know, Matt is my student.
Yeah. So I didn't have a desire initially. I didn't think that was actually an attainable goal, frankly, for me. And it took a long time of process and experience to realize that this could, in fact, be something that I could do as an option.
And now, a lot of people also get very caught up in the word Sifu as a title. Like, some people think, oh, is that like when you get your master's in education or a PhD or, some other sort of esquire, right? And so how would you define a Sifu?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I would have to say intention would be the priority. So, I mean, it's kind of silly that I'm talking to you about this, because you know much more in depth than I could explain, but it comes down to what your intention is. So yes, I think oftentimes that a lot of people see it as this kind of goal, like it is an achievement to have done that, but it's really not. It's just a new step in how you're going to be a martial artist. And when I first started, and now as well, I'm still, of course, trying to grow within this. I have to, it's not about my training any longer. So it wasn't as if I took my training and put it aside, so to speak, but the priority and my intention of how and I'm using Wah Lum Kung Fu has changed. It's not like, okay, well, fine, great, you can swim, congratulations. Can you help other people do it as well? And that has become a new standard of kind of achievement, where once upon a time I was only interested in what I could do. Could I win this? Could I hold my Saping Mile for this long? Could I participate in this type of event? And now it's, I'm 2 steps removed from the actual action of that. But it's a really nice spot to be.
And I think audiences and listeners, we have a lot of Wah Lum Kung Fu people who kind of tune into this, would kind of be interested in a little bit of a backstory of like some of those challenging moments. And it's okay, like viewers, I get that you're literally talking about my classes and me, but what is it like training at the temple and then having me, for example, as your Sifu? Like, how does that shape how then you teach, but also what are some of those challenges that, because people always hear about these advanced class, or they hear about, what that training is like, but the reality, I think, is often a lot different than what people maybe even imagine. I don't know if it's harder or easier, but I mean, like most Kung Fu students, I
think that they get lost in the idea of what advanced means. And I was in, of course, that same exact position. There's nothing wrong with being wrong. You know what I mean? If you're a 2 or 3 or 4 year student, you don't know. So you have to make, you make an assessment based on what you do know, but you know that much. So the most important thing is to know that you know that much. So frankly, what turned out to be advanced was what was oftentimes considered to be the least complex. Right. So, I mean, I learned, combo number 1 and butterfly kicks and performance and demonstration and lion dancing, but all of it was fundamentally the exact same material in which I was striving to become proficient in my basic classes. It was just a considerably higher standard. And I was able to learn that, which was a great benefit, but it was not easy to do. Simple doesn't mean easy.
Right, of course. And were there times that you wanted to quit?
No. I know that other people have struggled with that, but I never wanted to quit. I always frankly felt like I was in a very unique and fortunate position. There were times where I was incredibly frustrated with myself, frustrated with my teammates, maybe frustrated with Kung Fu in general, sure. I mean, obviously, there's going to be rainy days. There's no way you're going to get out of it without getting wet. But there was no point in time where I wanted to quit, no.
Yeah. And, I often hear students talk about that, I just had a really horrible class and it was so hard. So I don't know if I can go back, whether it's because the class was so challenging and they felt it wasn't something they could achieve, or whether it was just literally like they didn't have what it took, and then there was like an embarrassment, right? There's a little bit of, whenever I see a student and they haven't been to class in a while, they immediately, this is what's going on, and I'm like, hey, I understand everyone's life is so different, and I think they're under the misconception that I think that everyone should take this as seriously as I do.
Exactly.
And that's certainly not the case. But for you, were there, maybe you could share some moments where you were just kind of at that, maybe even a physical breaking point. It doesn't even have to be so grand that you were going to quit, but something that you thought, man, why am I doing this? And what am I putting my body through this stress and that intensity?
Well, as confidently as I can say, I never considered quitting. That's true, but I was riddled with doubt, and still frankly am. This is not something that you ever achieve. That entire ideology is flawed from the get. This is something that you continually strive for, and that's the entire point. So oftentimes, and this translates often to like the last podcast that we did, people would ask me like, how many times did you want to quit? And I would say, well, I didn't want to quit hiking the Appalachian Trail. My goal wasn't really to get to Katahdin, because when I got to Katahdin, that's the last mountain at the end of the Appalachian Trail. If you're going north, that is. That's a 5-month journey, continual hiking. So, like when I got there, that means that it was over, and that's not my goal. I wasn't looking to check that off so I can go and tell people. Most people don't even know what that is anyway. In the same exact example as, okay, I studied Chinese Kung Fu, traditional Chinese Kung Fu. Most people don't really know what that means. So basically, even though I didn't want to quit, I was riddled with doubt continuously. Can I do this? Will I ever be competent or capable? I knew that there were examples within the school, my Sifus aside, just from other students where I watched them move, I watched their ability, and I would know deep down, I'll never be able to do that. I can't possibly compete with that. I don't know why. I know that there's a deficiency in some way, but I can't really identify it nor work on it. So frankly, I stopped trying to consider it. I was highly competitive for a long time, as you know. I really enjoyed that. But at a certain point, I had to, like you say, most students will oftentimes have a feeling of shame. I failed in some way. And it has taken me a long time to then step back and go, okay, well, yeah, man, I failed today, but I attempted to do it, and that's something. And if I can continue to embrace the attempt of doing it, I'll have good days as well. It's when the shame becomes more powerful than the realization of subtle progress that then you get to a point of effectively hopelessness and despair. And you might not even be conscious that this is happening. You might just be sitting in your buy-fit salad going, I suck at this. And just reinforcing negativity continuously until you're like, finally, why? No, you're right. I do. I stink at this. I'm not going to be good at it. And only then do you ultimately fail. That is, once again, to quit.
Right. And I think the most challenging thing I've seen from a teaching perspective is that students don't realize how slow the progress goes in Chinese Kung Fu, but particularly Wah Lum Kung Fu.
Yeah.
You know, they join the school, they see the demo team, or they've watched a show at Chinese New Year, and they're like, I'm going to be doing that. Mm-hmm. And then when they realize, wow, I need to relearn the alphabet in order to even start learning words, and this is going to take a long time. Yeah. Our culture here in the United States is really not conducive to producing a lot of amazing traditional Chinese martial artists, because it is just not the mentality of the culture here. And so as a teacher now who had to kind of go through all of this, and now you're going, how do I explain this to my students? Isn't it interesting for you that you have this knowledge, you've been doing this for over half of your life now, right? Martial arts. And it's all of those years to come to this kind of idea of understanding what all that means, and then trying to explain it to someone from day one, and you're like, how come you don't get it? I don't understand, because it's a simple concept, and it's common sense. And I've quoted this for the last 2 weeks, like, you know, common sense is not so common from Voltaire, and it's like, it is common sense, but what is one way that you've found to be effective, or how do you try to explain it to a beginner who's like, I want to learn the spear. When do I get to that?
Well, I mean, again, that's a really great question, because so many people see physical failure as that, in that terminology, as a failure. The only thing that I have found is a little bit effective is to basically preemptively warn them, because like you said, like, our culture is so nowadays entertainment based, so it's so easy to watch ridiculously phenomenal athletes on a regular basis on your phone or on TV, and then movies as well, that if you're not engaged in athletic work on a regular, consistent basis, you can kid yourself into thinking, oh, well, it can't be that difficult. Like, no question it's difficult, but, you know, if these guys can do all this, then I should be able to do X. But then why do you think that? Why do you think you're able to do X? So the only thing that I see that has been slightly beneficial, and nobody believes me anyway, right? But it's the only thing that I found, maybe I'll just continue to do this and perhaps it'll click, is to celebrate when they fail. So if I have a new student and, you know, they're all tight and working hard and they're like, I'm going to try hard, that means tension, and they assume I can do 15 push-ups, let's just say, or I can hold my Saping Ma for, 2 minutes. And then after 30 seconds, they're like, oh my God, I can't do this. And when they fail, be like, yes, excellent, great job. You've now identified what your limitations are, and that's why we're here. And that is an awesome thing. See now if you can go 3 more seconds. See now if you can do in small increments, because I don't like to be the one guy who consistently reaches back to one example, but it works so well as the long distance hike on the Appalachian Trail, to continuously hike that far. And again, that's what I'll hear regularly. Like, how did you do that? And it seems like such a kind of flippant response, but it is the actual truth, is I did it one step at a time.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how it happens.
Yeah, I think it's just great to constantly reframe and remind ourselves that is what it is in any kind of goal in life. Not martial arts, not hiking. I mean, anything you want to do, it is one step at a time. Whenever you try to skip steps, that's where you also set yourself up for failure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And, this past year has been unbelievably insane for everyone. So for our viewers, just so you know, this is being recorded in early May of 2021, and we just kind of came through the pandemic with finally having vaccinations, which, by the way, both of us are fully vaccinated, which is why there's this proximity, which is freeing, and it's kind of amazing, right?
It
that
really is,
science, yay, science and medicine, but many of us are still struggling. Many people are still struggling, and many people did not come out of this with their lives.
Yeah.
So we've lost people. There's been family members and friends, and we've seen just all these tragedies. So for the first time in a very long time, historically, anything that I've ever seen in history, everybody is affected. This is something like where we've all been affected by a challenge.
Universal.
It's a universal challenge.
Exactly, yeah.
And with any challenge as a teacher, we kind of go to the well with a challenge. That means there's something to overcome, which means there's something to learn. It doesn't mean I'm trying to be the whole, oh, we can be positive about this. There's some positivity. Absolutely not. But I always believe in learning from experience. As an instructor, that's our big thing, is learning from experience. I often say that as the teacher, I'm learning more than the student almost every day. You find that you're learning more, and it becomes a little bit shocking, actually, how much you think you know when you go in as a young instructor, and then you realize that you're then having to relearn things as well. And so we've all been through this pandemic. It's been completely crazy. As a Wah Lum system, we were supposed to get together last year to celebrate the 50th anniversary and the 40th anniversary here in Orlando. And we were supposed to have this amazing gathering both in Boston and Orlando, where we were supposed to do the recertification. For people who don't know, Wah Lum Sifus have to recertify every 3 years. So it's not like your PhD or your master's where you get it and you're good, you put your certificate on the wall and you're like, ta-da, for life, this is me. Every 3 years, we are obligated to uphold our standard and to continuously train and to continuously prove that this is a responsibility that you're able to continue doing by proliferating the art of Wah Lum. And it's a pretty intense thing, would you say?
Yeah, it's terrifying and encouraging at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Because if you want to participate basically in anything, I want to participate in something that's worthwhile, particularly if it requires this amount of dedication, loyalty, and hard work for this amount of time. So I'm very lucky. My parents happened to move to Orlando randomly. Now I know lots of New Englanders randomly move to Florida. But
it's a little warmer.
Yeah, I mean,
no snow to shovel.
Yeah, that was a big thing with my mom. But meaning that in '97, I just went to the temple. That was the first place I went, and the only place I went. So yes, I'm a martial artist, but I'm a Wah Lum martial artist. So from the get, this was the standard. From day one, from my first introductory class, the standard is, these are very small increments, and this is hard, and this is going to be for a long time. A long time. And that type of foundation translates and permeates, if you can adapt it, that is, or if it resonates with you. It's not for everybody, but if it is for you, and it does resonate with you, I mean, it can stretch to every aspect of your life overall. And the fact that that you and your family uphold that standard for everybody, no matter how long they've been a student. This is still the standard. Welcome to the table. Now earn it. I personally, as challenging as it is, love that. I love that. Because so many people, they want something to show other people. I have this. Doesn't that change the way you see me? Doesn't that elevate me in some way in your mind? And for me, I'm generally an introspective person. I'm just happy to be here.
But I think what people don't realize is that, oh, wow, you have to continuously not prove yourself, but continuously show that you are keeping up with your personal training. Because to be a teacher is different than a practitioner. And in order to be a teacher, you have to first be a student. And in Wah Lum, you're always a student. People think, well, you're a Sifu now, so you have all the answers, you're able to do everything, you have... you break all the rules or whatever, you have a free for all, but it's really the beginning of a new journey. And so what was amazing to me of last year's journey was that we couldn't get together to do that certification. And so I had the challenge of how are we going to make sure everybody feels that sense of responsibility, but it's also my responsibility to ensure that the style is being upheld, but also that you guys get your moment to be a student, that you guys get your enrichment, that you get the attention that you need instead of giving, which is what teaching is. I mean, not just martial arts, any teacher knows it's a giving profession with very little appreciation, and like the few moments you get back is what sustains you. But I feel it was so important that you guys had that time for yourselves, especially amidst the pandemic, especially amidst the time where there was little human interaction, connectivity to something that allowed us to have a greater whole and be a part of something that was meaningful and positive and enriching. And so we did this crazy, like everybody else, Zoom thing where we were able to do kind of a checkpoint. And it was kind of the first time ever we had to do something like that. And it's the same thing. With a trial and tribulation comes a solution to the problem and a way to overcome it. And I was so overwhelmed with how the process went and how well everyone did, how seriously they all took it, even though it was an online thing. And like, it just, everybody was still able to come together. It was such an amazing thing. Now, it was painful for me. Like, I literally, watching everybody in this capacity, it was not easy. Grandmaster Chan, like, it wasn't easy for him as well, but grateful for my Kung Fu brothers, Sifu Bob, Sifu George, Sifu Tu, that like stuck with me to be able to help facilitate this. And, I, of course, know you as my student, and so I know a lot about you. I've known you a very long time, and I consider all my students like my kids, and I go on that journey. And because I know you, I know that there wasn't just the pandemic happening for you, that there have been so many challenges over the past several years that has and could be what one would call a limitation that would make other people quit, that would make other people say, you know what, I think like my life is telling me that maybe I can't do this. And because you are Appalachian Trail Matt and you are the person you are, you've been able to persevere. And I feel like that is such a meaningful thing to be able to share with students as a teacher, to be able to inspire people to continuously take that incremental step, because all of us have a challenge. All of us have an inner struggle or a physical struggle or something that's happening. And it's amazing to me that you were able to accomplish what you did at the test last year, because honestly, you didn't just do well because you had challenges or things that were difficult for you. I think you did well overall. And that just shows me once again that the spirit is stronger than, any physical challenge or something that's in your way. Like, if you want something, you can do it. Right. And so I told your peers, and I told, the staff that we talked to, my Kung Fu brothers were like, yeah, man, like, Matt was like, hey guys, I've got stuff going on. So, a lot of Sifus come, they go, oh, I just finished knee surgery. I just finished having this, I had that. And we watch, and we're very understanding of all of these things, because we're all getting older, not younger. And so, we're in our 40s, but then there are Sifus in their 60s and 70s and higher. And they, of course, aren't doing butterfly kicks, but they can teach it, and they prove that. And so it's not about the physicality. It's about the knowledge that you are going to pass on. And I was so pleased with your ability to do that. I'd be honored, but also grateful if you would share that journey with others, because I know not everybody really knows what's been going on with you personally. I know that I know, but it's part of being a teacher, right? Is to share what we've learned and the hardships that we've overcome, because that is going to, I think, help inspire others. So if you're open to it, I'd love for you to kind of share the vagueness that I've been sharing with the audience this far.
Well, I mean, frankly, it warms my heart to hear you say that. And so in the basic sense, I've been very physical my entire life, and it's part of the way that I've had my external and physical world become an positive way that I can reach out to help heal and stabilize my internal and mental world.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't exactly as clear as I thought I was at the time of how dependent I had become with that. Or frankly, because I've been doing it for so long, how much my identity has been intertwined with it. So about 5 years ago, I got a blood clot in my leg, deep vein blood clot. And there was no rhyme or reason for it, wasn't really sure. It hurt, blah, blah, blah. I went to doctors and such. So it's not a big deal. I didn't really take it as a sign of something further to come. And so they put me on some drugs, and I took the drugs. And then I got another blood clot while I was on the drugs. So they switched me to put me on another drug. And then I got more blood clots, a succession of blood clots.
Yeah.
And then I started getting blood clots in my lungs as well. And fortunately for me, they're small. Like typically you get one blood clot, and they usually find it in autopsy, typically speaking. It goes into your heart, you have a heart attack, go into your lungs, you have pulmonary failure, it goes into your brain, and you have aneurysm, and typically ends in death. So I'm very lucky. I've had very small blood clots, but at this point in my life, over the last 5 years, and I know it sounds crazy, but I've had over 24 blood clots. And it's not just the ones that stick, it's the damage that they do throughout your systemic vascular system. There's no ultimate reason for it. It turns out I've been to amazing hospitals and amazing doctors. It's a genetic predisposition, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you're born with a breast cancer gene and it happens to be stimulated for one reason or another, there's really nothing you can do except for try to work through it. I lost a lot of physical ability, considerable amount of physical ability. I can't stand for very long. I can't walk very far. So the idea of like me as hiking Sifu, Matt, that is basically not really in the cards any longer. Like that's just not going to happen. Like maybe I could walk a mile, but during that mile I have to sit down 3-4 times.
Yeah.
And it's damage that's irreversible and chronic and probably long-term degenerative. So it may not, frankly, get better. And that's not pessimism. That's analysis. And then somehow or another, because the blood clots in my lungs have become chronic, and they take a very, very long time to heal, if ever, I somehow developed adult onset asthma. And I went to the Mayo Clinic, had all the tests that are possible to be done, and effectively that's just what it is. Like here's a puffer, and you need a puffer, and best of luck, bro. And so I can pass as able-bodied as I move through the world because, I've been a traditional martial artist for 24 years. So when you see me, you don't see someone who's disabled, right? You see a perfectly normal person, whatever normal passes for, you know what I mean? But in reality, I might be able to pass, but in reality, I have now a disability. So the process that I have gone through, as difficult as the physical stuff was, in addition, I had hip replacement just 5 months ago, like total hip replacement. All of these setbacks, physically speaking, I was not prepared for the emotional and mental drain and grief that I kind of experienced. I've had to change who I thought I was, and the fear, it was almost like, I can die, right? So when you hear doctors kind of reaffirming, hey, by the way, like this is the reality of your situation. Like I can kind of accept that, but as I continue to live, being incredibly fortunate, I mean, it gives you, there's plenty of perspective you can gain there, and especially gratitude and embracing love and engaging with people in ways that maybe you were a little too, or maybe, I was a little too intimidated doing before, because intimate stuff, with people that you love, even when you're closer, it's not easy. Well, at least it hasn't been for me. Hasn't been for me.
Of course.
It's just worse. I mean, I love the spin, not just love, it's the only path. The only path is, as you just explained, look, this is the reality of it. COVID was bad for everybody, right? It's worse for some people for sure. There's nothing good about COVID, but let's try to find whatever we can and focus on the growth that can be done there. And so there's there's everybody. There's dark days. You sit at night and you think, the life I had is over.
Yeah.
Like, I can't be that anymore. And that was scarier to me as a reality of continuing to live. What if I can no longer be a practitioner?
Mm-hmm.
How in the world can I teach Wah Lum Kung Fu when I myself can no longer do it?
Yeah.
Little by little, very, very little by little, I'm starting to make small strides, physically speaking. And I'm not giving up with doctors and hospitals. I go back to the Mayo Clinic at the end of this month, as a matter of fact, for a few more testing and another attempted procedure, etc. But now, and I just didn't think it was going to happen this soon, frankly. But now I have to really take a step back and be like, okay, well, how can I basically do what I love doing for other people? And again, I'm in a very, fortunate, privileged position where I go, well, what does my Sifu do? All the stuff that my Sifu does that I am completely unfamiliar with. The level of organization and logistical approach to teaching, inspiring, encouraging, and moving Wah Lum forward. How in the world can I do that? Because I never saw myself in that role. I only saw myself in this very small box. And I don't know that I would have ever gotten out of that box if it wasn't necessary for me to have gotten out of that box. Mm-hmm. So that's the way I try to see the positive in it. I embrace Tai Chi.
Well, and I'll give you a moment because I know it's a lot to share. And I can tell you that even if you're just talking to me and nobody even tunes into this, like, this matters. What you're sharing matters, because it is reinventing yourself. It is saying, hey, I do have to grieve the parts of me that are in the past, right? And I think we all do that in different ways for different reasons. And I think it's so refreshing that you're able to share that, because so many people are afraid of losing something versus let me see what I can gain now. So like you just shared was, well, I've been kicked out of the box and now I have to go, okay, here's other things that now I have to learn to adapt and do and move forward. Because back to the beginning of our conversation, when I asked you ever thought about quitting, and you said no, that includes these horrible last 5 years of your life. You never once said to me, I think I have to give this up. My health is at stake. I need to be home and just be and take care of you. That was never a conversation we had. It was never a conversation about quitting. It was, okay, here's the deal I've been given, like, here's the hand I've got, what do we do with it? And I think what's important is that because you shared that, we were able to work through things. You have an amazing support system at home with an incredible wife that has also facilitated you moving forward instead of standing on one place. I'm not saying it's been easy. Like, we are fast forwarding here and doing a lot of the, there's been some dark times and then there's been some tears. There's been some moments where you do need to take that time for yourself to grieve and take a time to step back. That's completely normal, right? But what I've found, with my sister having limitations since she was born, not even supposed to live, like beating the odds, is that beating the odds is kind of a thing Wah Lum practitioners do, right? And she is my daily reminder of, okay, I'm upset, this isn't going well, I have a challenge today, but Tina pushes me through that every single day. I think about her, and I know you and I've talked about that, where you go, wow, she's kind of like that quiet presence that we don't really hone in on until maybe something in ourselves makes us hone in on that. And I think that that's the same for you. People will say, well, Matt's the physical guy or whatever. And it's like, well, you know what? Now his Kung Fu has changed, but it doesn't mean that it's worse. It doesn't mean that it's regressed. It means now you've progressed onto having to do it a different way given what you have to deal with, right? And I think that's what I would like people to take from this, because everybody has something going on. I'm so inspired by the Tai Chi students in the morning that Simo is like whipping like their 18-year-old athletes, and she doesn't care that they just had a bypass or a shoulder thing. I mean, these are like 80-year-old seniors, and she treats them like they are, getting ready for the Olympics. She does not hold back. And it's kind of the Chan family thing, right?
Seems to be.
And so it's like, oh, sorry. Okay, Matt, so you're having breathing issues because obviously we don't want you to have any issues into your lungs. Well, that's fine. I can do a lot with 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, I can do plenty with that. I actually do that anyway, even with students that doesn't have an issue with breathing or having to stop because, your leg is now throbbing because there's no blood flow, right? Like, I'm like, I do that regardless, right? And so it becomes kind of reframing and seeing what we have as our challenge, how we're going to overcome it, and realizing, you know what, it does suck. And that's okay to say. It's okay to be pissed off about it and grieve the fact that these are things that may no longer be on the table. But let's look towards the things that we can do, and knowing that, wow, we just had a great lesson this week where it wasn't any really different in terms of what you get out of it and of Kung Fu learning. Yeah, it was different in that we broke things up. But, I mean, we've had lessons before, and it wasn't that it was any, like, limited or there wasn't any holding back or so it's just changes. So we evolve as well, just like we found a vaccine for the corona, but not we, but those amazing scientists. I apologize, I don't remember the names, but everybody has things that they're going to need to overcome, and I think what's important is that we overcome them and then we do them together, right? And so you don't have to take this on alone. You have an entire Wah Lum family who has of course been supportive, but it's important that you share. And I say this because other students, other people, other practitioners are kind of afraid of that, and it is scary.
Well, so am I. I mean, I'm no different. I'm just Matt, right? And I'm glad that you pointed it out because, and it's not to be the least bit pessimistic because clearly I'm not, but when you do go through substantial loss, which in fact we all at some point or another most certainly will. But when you do and you're not prepared for it, I did it wrong in the beginning. I did it in a manner in which I thought that with my strength and endurance, I could persevere because that's what worked for me in the past. And that's not possible. Mm-hmm. It's not possible when things are significant like that. So I don't want to give the impression that, oh, I'm good now, right? I'm not good now. This is still a whole new way of processing my identity, my ability, and how I'm perceived by others and accepting it. And I wasn't ready for that when it happened. And when it happened over a period of years. And frankly, to be candid, because I wasn't addressing the sadness and the fear, and I didn't understand that packing it down, as so many of us do, and putting on a brave face is not healthy. It's not better to do that. Now, there's a time and place in which it's necessary to do that, I understand. But as an approach to significant loss, pain, and suffering, it's not healthy. Because as I used to hope that my external world would kind of solve some of my internal world issues, which for a long time it did. I was left bare. Okay, well, you can't do this now. You're not capable of doing this now. Where I would get up and go to the restroom and come back and think to myself, I cannot believe how hard that was. Like, I've hiked 7-8 miles straight over 3 mountain peaks that weren't, honest to God, this is not hyperbole, that were not nearly as difficult as it was for me to just go to the bathroom and come back. And the shock of that resonating through, like, wow, that's the reality. That's not, someone's like, oh, I'm sorry that that's the way. But when you're doing it internally to yourself, so you have to seek external help. And I'm not particularly good at that. And that's a new skill set that I must learn and have been going through the process of starting to learn.
Yeah.
I'm in a deficit because I came from that kind of, tough guy mentality, which is completely unhealthy. The yin exists for a reason. And since I wanted to be a fighter for so long, since I wanted to be competitive for so long, I've neglected it. But thankfully, I didn't choose MMA or bodybuilding or something that is nearly 100%, not to be judgmental, but to be realistic, nearly 100% physically based. And again, very fortunate by no exceptionality to myself, but just by circumstance, I stumbled upon traditional Wah Lum Kung Fu.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And because of that, as you mentioned before, it's the small increments. Learn the letter, learn the word, and then learn how to put it into a sentence. And while you're doing that, the whole thing oftentimes is, when am I going to have a conversation? When can I go and order food? When can I have the ability to speak this language? And it's like, learn the letter, learn the word, try to construct the sentence.
Yeah.
And I'm in that process now, which is completely different while simultaneously being exactly the same.
Yeah, there's a kind of I don't know if it's poetic, but an irony there of the fact that all of us, though, as practitioners, Matt, and so by no means do I understand what you're going through, because it is an internal struggle. It is something that I've never been faced with, but each maybe decade, but maybe even more every 5 years of my life, I find that I'm relearning things.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of I always tell people when they come in, so when do I finish is the big, when do I finish learning? Like, when am I done? Like, when you die?
Yeah.
Pretty much when you die. And I said, you could either think of this in two ways. You could be super inspired and excited about the fact that you will never, ever finish learning and it will never be 100% and that you have so much more to go. Or you could be frustrated by that fact. You choose which one you want to be. Mm-hmm. And my hope is that you're excited over the fact that you're never going to finish learning and that this is going to be a lifelong journey. And it's a perspective, right? So we need to choose how we define ourselves. Mm-hmm. We need to choose how we define how we move forward through life and what we're going to allow to define us and regardless of what's happening, right? And so you've chosen not to quit. You've chosen to relearn things, and you've chosen to continue the journey of being a Wah Lum Sifu, and I'm very proud of you for that.
Well, thank you very much for saying that. Although I haven't been verbal very much about it, because I'm still very much my father's son, I can't imagine, I can't really consider how many times I've considered this is no longer an option for me. How many times? And if you are in that position, and I guess this is the one thing that I would like to stress the most, because for me, it's blood clots, right? And now chronic thrombosis and chronic pulmonary emboli, and you can't breathe, and that for me, right? Somebody else is breast cancer. It's a loss of function. Somebody else, it's a brain issue. They start losing memory. It's always going to be something else, and if you respond to that by shutting down and closing up, you're going to suffer more. That's it. You're just going to suffer more. If you've been in the position where you've developed relationships with fantastic people, you must reach out. You must tap into other people. If you don't, you're going to be in a dark room by yourself, suffering. And that is an option. I mean, we don't know who those people are because they're alone right now, suffering.
Yeah.
And a lot of people tend to choose that as if there is no alternative, because that's what it feels like when you're in that space, particularly when you're in that space for a long time. There is no alternative. This is who I am. This is my life now. And I've told myself, I'm not exceptional. I have told myself that over and over and over again. I can't. I won't. What now? And it's the process of, okay, yeah, I'm on my third basic horse stance. If I'm thinking about potentially joining the demo team anytime soon, I'm going to lose hope. because that's not a reality. But if you're excited about the 3 horse stances that you have and focus on your transitions and you time, wow, okay, I just held my Dunson Ma for 35 seconds. That is my new record, 35 seconds. I'm killing it today. If that's your experience, which I started to develop, where I pull into a parking lot and I go, all right, that's way too far. Like I can't get my groceries that way. I can't go in there. And furthermore, people will see me as not being able to do that. I'm now like that old man that's like randomly sitting at the grocery store. You know what I mean? You walk in to go get your groceries and there's just an old man sitting there for some reason. Like,
well, you know they give free coffee to seniors.
Right. They used to have newspapers, but there's no more newspapers. So now I'm kind of embracing that. Hey man, you know, I'm an old man, I'm going slow. I want to tell you have to slow down for me. And now we have to stop. Like, I'm sorry, I know that it sucks. I'm self-conscious of the fact that me being like this is worse for you also, not you personally, but whoever I happen to be with. I'm like, I realize that, but, you know, I accept it. I just have to accept it. And even when you accept it, like, you know, it's up and down. So long as continual progressive growth, you know, you're going to have days where, man, it's just terrifying. And then here's a hint, cry. Right? Cry. Hug someone that loves you and cry and share it. Because if you don't, you're just going to be packing that negativity in. And obviously that's not going to help you in any way.
Yeah. I think slowness is understated and that we all need to slow down every once in a while. So the final thing for me is that we are in this together, just like the pandemic. This is a universal thing, and we all have universal things. And so, what you just shared absolutely resonates. That, you know, we all share something, and we are in this together. And you are not alone in this, of course. And so, definitely reach out. Definitely let us know what you need and everything. So, thank you for sharing, Matt. I think it's very brave, and I'm really, really excited for people to be inspired by this and maybe train harder and maybe look at their life in a different perspective, knowing that you can accomplish something despite any challenge that comes your way. And so thank you so much for sharing.
Well, thank you very much for being interested and caring. And I really hope that, you know, this is someone out there that is in that position or may even just feel like you're in that position. You know, train. Train hard, do
hard work.
Yeah, hard work, man.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. I will link a lot of stuff here for you if you want to learn more about Sifu Matthew Martin from Raleigh, North Carolina. And please subscribe. We haven't done Kung Fu Pods nearly as often as we should, so we will be getting back on that. So please subscribe and follow us on all of our social media. I'm at Sifu Mimi Chan, and we'll see you next time. Bye.